Today would be understanding how the best decision varies according to evolutionary game theory. Evolutionary game theory refers to the mathematical application of the theory of games into biological conditions. This has been used to expound certain characteristics of human behavior like altruism, empathy, social learning, and social norms. A concept under evolutionary game theory is called the ESS, or an evolutionary stable strategy. The short definition for this is that this must be strategy employed by the population so that their average fitness is higher than that of any other strategy they employ. The hawk and dove game. This is an aspect under game theory which discusses the encounter of two players where each would decide whether to become a hawk and fight, or to become a hawk and retreat, or to become a dove, and retreat. The possible outcomes of this game are: number 1, when both players choose hawk. This is where players may be injured when they fight against another hawk. Number 2, when one chooses hawk and the other chooses dove. In this case, the hawk would overpower the dove and get all the resource for themselves. Or number 3, dove-dove, when both stand down and share the resources evenly. This is the payoff table of the hawk and dove game. The winner would get the resource R, and the loser would not necessarily get a value of negative R. However, the player that will be injured would get a damage in the value of D. So let's look at the payoff table. This one half in the hawk situation refers that this is the average payoff of both. This means that a player has a 50% chance to win and a 50% chance to be injured. So, in a span of many games, the one half explains that the average would be 50% winning and 50% losing. Let's look at the various situations of the hawk and dove game. Number 1, when resources are greater than damages, as we can see in the table, there will be no Nash equilibrium and choosing hawk would dominate the other strategy. So our conclusion for this is to just choose hawk. In table 2, this is similar to table 1, where there is no Nash equilibrium and hawk is still the dominant strategy. So our conclusion would be to choose hawk. In table 3, however, as we can see that there are already two Nash equilibriums and there is no dominant strategy. So our conclusion here is that we need to know what the strategy the other player chose so that we can choose the best strategy for both. These are the results of the hawk and dove game. What if both players choose dove but the resources are not shareable? Let us introduce the war of attrition game. The war of attrition game is where two players are engaged in a conflict where they make decisions simultaneously. They will also be competing for a resource, with each losing assets the longer they try to outlast their opponent. In this situation, two players are currently competing for a resource R, and they will need to pay a cost of C for each period of time T they play. So once a player backs down, the winner would get an added value of R, and both would need to pay a cost of C the longer they played. We can mostly see war of attrition in animal behavior, especially when they are competing for food, territory, or even a mating partner. Let's look at the payoff table of the war of attrition game. As you can see here, there are two male deers competing for a female. Let's give the female the resource R, since it would be the reward for winning the game. As you can see here, the winner would get resource minus cost times time, and the loser would get just minus cost times time. According to Maynard Smith, if the time that both players display is equal, then the winner would be decided at random, where each player has an equal chance to win and both would still need to pay cost. So the formula for this would be 1/2 R minus cost times time. Let's look at this example. Let's give the female a value of 100 and the cost of 3. Spo- Situation 1. Suppose after a 24-minute long contest, Deer B backs down and stops displaying. So this means that Deer A wins. So their payoffs would be, for Deer A, it would be plus 28, and for Deer B, it would be minus 72. Situation 2. After a 28-minute long contest, both deer get tired and back down. So, inputting the values in the formula, then both deer would get an average payoff of negative 34. So what can we take from this? Here's just a brief summary of things we have learned. Let's move on to the conclusion. Evolutionary game theory differs from regular game theory since this stresses that instead of measuring the success of an individual, it measures the success of the entire population and its ability to adapt strategies over time. It also stresses the importance of other factors such as other players as well as the frequency a decision is chosen by other players as well as how much it changes over time. As we can see, in the hawk and dove game, there is no ESS. When a whole population chooses hawk, a mutant called a single dove can alter the population. Since doves don't fight for a resource, then as hawks fight each other, their average assets continue to decrease. However, when a whole population chooses dove, a presence of a single hawk will overpower them. And the equilibrium of these two would depend on the values of resource and damages. Let's discuss. Let's apply both games in real life. Suppose we want to put up a business in a mall, and the only available spot is in front of another store which sells similar products to what we sell. So let us apply the hawk and dove game so that we can decide if we want to put up our business there. If the possible income we can gain from customers is greater than our losses, then it is better to compete with the other. However, if the possible income is less than the losses, then we must first consider the strategy that the opponent would employ. So let us look at the second condition on the previous slide, where income is less than losses. Then, if the opponent decides to play hawk, then it would be better that if we don't enter the market. However, if the opponent decides to play dove and would be willing to share customers, then we should enter the market since there is still a chance to earn income. Now let's say we enter the market and we decided to share customers. However, our business does not necessarily need to share customers. Let's say the gym memberships. Customers would not apply for memberships from both, but only one. So, this would cause you and your competitor to engage in a war of attrition with another. As we can see in real life, the cheaper the deal, the more customers it attracts. However, the less income it gives both businesses. If we are engaged in this game, the best solution to this game is to not let your opponent know when you're about to back down, and we should remain unpredictable. Remember that our opponent has more experience and may be able to predict our next move. So we need to keep them in the dark and make them decide whether to back down or to continue fighting. If the opponent is still confident that he is able to win and we are about to reach our limit, then it might be best to back down to reduce any more losses to our company. So let us say our final statements. Both these games can be applied in real life and may help us solve our decisions logically. And losing a competition does not only give losses, but also gives us more experiences and gives us a chance to innovate and deploy new and better strategy against existing ones in a better time. Thank you.